And welcome, guys. Myself, King Jones, the football pull up. So, transfer deadline day is done, and I'm going to focus on one team in particular, guys. Today, I'm going to focus on Arsenal's transfer window, which I thought was weak. And when I say weak, I don't mean just I mean weak. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people have been talking to me about it, asking me, why did I think it was weak? And I'm going to go through some of the reasons before I give a grading at the end. So, I'm going to put Arsenal's transfer window entirely when the window starts. Now, I'm only going to talk about summer transfers that come in the squad before the summer transfer window and the squad after the transfer window. So I'm not going to talk about January transfers, even though they are probably considered their first full season because they did play before. So you take that into factor when you're signing summer players, what you needed at that point. So we're going to start off in the summer. I felt Arsenal needed several players, and I'm going to put it in terms of what's clear that you can only do it based on what I think they needed and also what the manager was going to use. Because again, there's no point talking about players that the manager is not going to use or, or might not play, but positions that they may need depth in. So I thought at the start of the window, the depth issues that Arsenal had were apparent after Saliba got injured and Rob Holding was not good enough. Of course, Ben White seems like he's a fullback now, so he obviously wasn't going to be a replacement for if Saliba got injured. And obviously, you've had the injury record of Tomiyasu in the past, Tierney's injury record in the past, Partey, whose record wasn't bad that season, and even Tierney's record, who actually, though I just said him a minute ago, his record was actually not that bad last season. I felt like Arsenal, when the window started, needed another central midfielder. Because another DM or centre midfielder, or actually another DM, because I feel like Partey was the only DM at the club, and the other DMs were either different types of DMs or not similar or not up to scratch. So when I say different, I mean Jorginho plays in the base, but I don't think him and Partey are the same, and he can get exposed. He's not particularly that great defensively. He's not quick. He doesn't really share the same attributes as Partey. He's a player that's very good in games where you're going to keep a lot of possession, but it's not necessarily a battle. Elneny got injured last season, and I do think the quality that he has is nowhere up to scratch, and the drop off from Partey to him is massive. It seemed like Xhaka was going to go, and I don't think we had any other natural number eights at the club, though there were guys that it seems like they could have been pushing that position, but we're not sure if they could have done a similar job. For example, Emil Smith Rowe, he was talked about that role. Fabio Vieira. I didn't hear much about Trossard, but Trossard had some attributes about eight that could do. The reason why I'm not sure about those guys is because I feel like Xhaka was a DM who probably should never have been a DM, who found it easier to go into the eight because it focused on the attributes that he was strong in and less in the attributes that he was actually weaker in. So in the DM position, he was forced to tackle more, make more tackles, be closer towards defense, where he made more mistakes in terms of sloppy passes or just missed tackles, and he had to focus more on being the eight, which was actually less tackling, less losing the ball in dangerous positions, and more focused on going forward, taking shots and scoring goals, which I actually thought that he was actually adept in and actually did quite well in. So he excelled last season. Last season by far was his best season. Scored 7 Premiership goals, which though doesn't seem like a lot, is quite a lot for a number eight. A lot of number eights don't score a lot of goals. I can only think of a few in my head. Obviously, Gundogan is one of them, comes straight to mind. But most number eights don't score a lot of goals. So 5 to 10 is actually quite good for a number eight. So that's one of the position we needed an eight. We needed a DM, a backup winger. Talk about that a bit more. Saka really struggled towards the end of last season. Not to say he had a fantastic season, but I thought there were games where he was overplayed and there wasn't no adequate change. Though I think Reece Nelson did a decent job and scored. I think he scored two. He scored two against last season. He scored two last season. I forgot what team he scored him against. Scored the winning goal against Bournemouth. I don't think that he's the quality drop off is massive. Reece Nelson's quite injury prone. I think they needed a capable backup left mid, just like in terms of the position on the other side. Martinelli has backups in Trossard and Emil, who I think are much closer to quality in terms of the drop off than Reece Nelson was. Also, I think Arsenal need a striker, so this is a more interesting one. Obviously when Jesus came, everyone knows I'm a massive fan of Jesus, the way he plays, the hold-up play, the assist that he gets, very good on the ball, can play multiple positions. But there was always a question mark over whether he could, one, score 2 question marks, whether one, he could score enough goals, and two, whether he was clinical. So there's a difference. Clinical isn't necessarily how many goals you score because, again, it's about how much minutes you play. It's very hard to score if you don't play a lot. Clinical is about putting away the chances you do get, and I do think Arsenal create a lot of chances, and I thought Jesus was quite wasteful last season. And also the numbers, the amount of goals you get. I do think that when you're on the upper echelons of strikers, you should be looking to get 20 in the league and possibly 30 in all competitions. But 20 in the league is probably more of a parameter of someone that starts a lot. Jesus got injured for 1/3 of last season, so he did miss, I think, 12, 13 games. So he got 11 goals. So, roughly he would have got about 17 if he was fit, based on what I think was his trajectory, would have been around 17. So that question mark was there. And I think Eddie is not good enough personally as a number 2. And when I say not good enough, I'm not saying as just an overall player. I'm saying particularly for going for the league. If you look at the other teams that are going for the league, Man City, Alvarez was their number 2 striker. And as everybody knows, for me, in my opinion, Alvarez is as good as Jesus. Though Jesus has got more of a record in Europe, I did think there's similar levels of players. Maybe Jesus might be slightly better. So there was question marks there. So with Balogun coming back, scoring 21, my belief was if we bring back Balogun, striker doesn't need to be signed. But if we sell Balogun, striker has to be signed. So I'll say again, striker, winger, number 8, DM. And sorry, to go around that, a defensive player, a defender. So either a centre-back, a right-back, or a left back. And when I say that, because I think that Arteta's moving players around. So if he signs a right back, that means pushing Ben White towards the centre back position and just having the right back and Tomiyasu. If the centre back, then obviously you can get rid of Holding and it'd be Kawar and this centre back being the backup. Obviously a left back, then it allows what's called Kawar to not even have to be pointing as a left back. And also if he wants to get rid of Tierney, he can. Looking into the window, we signed Havertz, who I don't count as a signing. So the 4 signings that were made was Havertz, then Rice, then Timber, then Raya. The way I do signings, I think so you could see there are 4 signings I made, but I'd say about 3 first teams and about 6 signings overall I think Arsenal needed, because we're thinking about some of the players going out. So obviously Xhaka left, Havertz came in and Xhaka left, same thing. I do not rate Havertz as a player, so I found it hard to count him as a signing, because I just don't really think he's a particularly good football player. In terms of the last 3 years, what he's shown in the Prem, I know he had the massive record in the Bundesliga, but I just don't know what he would add to Arsenal. And of the first couple of games he's had, probably you guys can understand that. So I didn't really count him as a signing. And he hasn't impressed me in any of the pre-seasons. The Arteta press conferences where he spoke about the player that he showed at the number 8 position, I don't see it. Declan Rice came in, I look at it as a direct replacement. Is he an improvement on Xhaka? Most likely he is. As of yet, obviously, season hasn't completed, but I'm comparing Declan Rice not to Xhaka as an overall player, but just to his last season, because that's what we're taking him from. We're taking him from the last season, and we're putting Declan Rice in that position. So for me, that's a 1-for-1. So right now we're neutral, because I do think that we needed 3 to 6 players. And I won't count Havertz. I'm sorry, guys. I won't count him. I just won't do it. After that, Timber was signing, who I think was necessary. Timber was very necessary to be signed because obviously we needed the extra depth. He can play right back, centre back. I don't think he can play left back, but obviously Arteta does, so he played him there, and DM possibly. Then Tierney went, so obviously again that's a neutral, because I think Tierney, was an important player in the first team, whether he was playing or not. And Raya, who I actually think was an addition, because obviously we got rid of Turner, and I think he's above Turner. I think Turner was a non-entity in the team. I didn't want to see him play at all. And I think Raya will, in the long term, take Ramsdale's position. Now, the issue is that we sold Balogun, didn't replace him. And I think we need a striker. We are obviously getting rid of Pepe. I don't want to keep him. But we're not getting any sort of backup right mid. I don't think we're getting another player to play possibly as an 8 or a DM. And obviously we're using Havertz, who I don't think is the guy. And we are not getting a left back to replace, or another centre back, because Timber's injured for the season. So now, going into the start of this year, compared to the start of the summer, we've lost Tierney. And to me, in my opinion, we've lost Timber, because Timber's out for the season. So we're out 2 defenders who were in the first team, and we're lacking now. So if you look in goalkeeper, we're stronger than we were at the start of the season, at the start of the summer, because Raya and Ramsdale are better than Turner and Ramsdale were. If you go into left back position, in my opinion, we're weaker, because at the start of the summer, we had what's called Zinchenko, Tierney, and then if desperate, Kawhi. I don't know if I'm saying it right. And now with Tierney out, it's just Zinchenko and Kawhi. It's weaker in that position. If you go to right back at the start of the summer, it was Ben White and Tomiyasu. The same. You go to centre back at the start of the summer. You obviously we had Kawhi, Holding, Saliba, and Gabriel. Right now, it's technically weaker because you have Gabriel, you have Saliba, you have Kawhi. There's no Holding. Possibly Ben White can fit in, but again, that's stretching players from our position. So we actually have less players there. I do think we actually are weaker, though I don't rate Holding. A body is still needed. I've heard a lot about a young player that Zinchenko was talking about, I think, on Rio Ferdinand's podcast. Then he rates him. I don't mind bringing in a new guy to see what he can do because I really didn't think Holding was at the level. You go into midfield, you've got, Declan Rice and Partey. I do think that these guys could be stronger than Xhaka and Partey were last season. But I think we needed an addition. I think Jorginho is a decent player, but I think the drop-off, I don't think it's more than the drop-off with Jorginho. I mean, a lot of people want to hate on him, but I think he's just a different player. I think he's a different player. He has his necessary needs, but I think if he's a player you can bring on, but if Partey gets injured, he's not a replacement. It's just not. They're completely different players. He does something completely different to what Partey does. So I think we need someone more Partey similar, more Caicedo-ish, more Lavia-ish, someone more, Partey-like. I do, Havertz, again, I just won't count. I just think every time I've watched him, the position of an 8 for me, when you watch Kovacic, you watch Gundogan, you watch Xhaka, you watch Declan Rice, you keep going, obviously you watch Eriksen if he had more legs. There's several ways they can do it. Dembele was good at it, Tottenham. I think you've got the traditional 8 in the sense of a ball carrier, so he gets the ball, and he runs forward and he dribbles with it, beats one or two man, or just gets the ball further down and gives it to a slightly more creative player, but he creates space. You've got the passer, he gets the ball, he turns around. Xhaka did this quite a lot. He looks left, he looks right, he makes a pass forward. Quite a good pass. You get one that, makes runs beyond, gets on the edge of the box. Xhaka was quite good at that as well. Scores goals, clean up what gets to the edge of the box. Sometimes makes runs beyond the striker that, can't be traced so they can get the goal. Lampard was very good at that. But basically their goal is to turn forward and to start the move of it being forward, from getting it from the DM or from the defender. They turn forward and they start trying to start something. When I watch Havertz, a lot of the time, he doesn't really get up and turn with the ball. He tends to one-two it back to the person who gives it to him. He doesn't really turn around and look for stuff. He makes a lot of runs, but a lot of the time he doesn't get the ball. That's not his fault, but I don't think he does the ball carrying, neither does he do the pass, neither does he get into enough goal-scoring positions. So I don't think he adds too much. I'm not really a fan of him, to be fair. Of course, I'm going to give him the season. I think that this transfer window has been poor. I think at the start of the window, Arsenal really had a chance to do something, to really get a team that was strong enough to fight anybody and stretch themselves across 4 competitions. And we ended up with a squad with, lack of depth. But I'll keep going further. Obviously, you go to right wing, we're as weak as we were in the summer start. Obviously we had just Saka and Nelson. It's about the same. Left mid, you have Emil, Trossard, and Gabriel. I think that's one of our strong positions. We didn't need anybody for there. We have Odegaard and Fabio Vieira. I wasn't really convinced of Fabio Vieira. I always liked his technical ability, but physically, I was very concerned last season watching him. That game that he recently had was the best game I've seen in the Arsenal shirt, even though it was 30 minutes. If he can push on from there, I think number 10 wasn't really a massive issue. Strike force, it concerns me because, obviously Jesus got injured again. It's another time that he's been injured, quite a relatively long injury. He came back faster than I thought he would, but we do need him to stay fit, and I'm not sure about the goals he'll score. As much as people like Eddie, we have to be honest, the amount of goals Eddie has scored, the most he scored is 5 in the Premier. I'm going to talk about Premier League because Champions League is completely different. 5. I do like my backup strikers if you have them. I would, obviously he has to get more games, but I'd like him to score 10 goals. Try and get over that threshold, and I'd like Jesus to aim for the 20 goals. But I'm not sure about them as strikers. There's no comparison between any of them and Haaland and Alvarez. There's no comparison between Actually, to be fair, there's really many top strikers. But I do think there's a lot of strikers that I would be more confident of scoring more goals in our team than those two. I can name a few if you guys want. Obviously, you got Ivan Toney, who I think is a fantastic goal scorer. I think he has a lot about him. He's quite clinical. Again, he has his issues. I have Vlahovic, who I do think had a bad season last season. Again, he's got 2-2 now. I think he will go and score a lot of goals. I think he's young. I think he's quite clinical. I think he's got enough about him to score quite a few goals in the Premier League. Of course, you got Haaland, you got etc. There, Callum Wilson, who I think his injury record is woeful, but his goal scoring is amazing. I think Isak. I think if anyone knows me, I'm a massive fan of Isak. I think he can really go on to be, he can go on to be something. I think he's going to go on and score a lot of goals. Of course, Kane's going to Bayern Munich, Lewandowski, etc. But I do think there's other strikers who I'm just a touch more convinced will score more goals. But again, I understand that it'd be hard to go out there and get a striker. I think Balogun, it would have been nice to keep him, but again, they had to make money. But I think this window could have really been something, and I think they crashed out by not going as hard as they could. Yes, the Declan Rice signing was hard, but I think Arteta's made a tough situation harder on himself. And I'll say through getting rid of Tierney without adequate replacement. Timber's injured for the season. So for me, Timber is not a signing until he's fit. Like, there's no point talking about, we signed this guy. If he had got injured after the transfer window, then I understand. I'll be the first one to be like, you know what? You can't sign anyone. But 3 weeks left. We had 3 weeks. And it was before Tierney went. It's during when we could have signed someone and we didn't either. We didn't replace him and we got rid of someone who could play in a position that he could play in. So I have to put it on Arteta, and this is why he put more pressure on himself. The Havertz signing, nobody rated. We actually signed him for what, 5-6 mil less than Chelsea after 3 bad seasons, in my opinion. 1 goal in the Champions League, but majority bad season. We paid him. He's one of the highest paid players at our club, one of the highest, most expensive signings we've ever signed for a player that I don't think on his best day out in the Premier League would be one of our best players at our club. For a player that, to be honest, I don't even know what his goals are here. He's almost getting treated like he has no goals and he can just kind of just float around and this, that. But I think the moment you start getting over that 200, you start getting the big money and the big wages. You get the big wages and the big transfer. You have to come in and be one of the best players. And I'm looking at how Sterling's begun this season. I'm looking at my expectations for Jesus. He's had 3 years in the Prem, 3 years in London. I'm not looking at him, he needs a year to adapt and all this. No. 24 now, I need to start seeing before. Same with Declan Rice. I'm not giving Declan Rice, let him adapt, give him a year. No, I expect these players to come in and then end the season as one of our better players and one of the better players in the league. And in any friendly, I'm yet to see that. He's quite sheepish. He doesn't really, I don't rate him as much as I rate Xhaka defensively, and I didn't think Xhaka was defensively great, but I think a former DM will always be a better tackler than a former striker going into an A. So again, that's the issue with Arsenal. I'm going to give Arsenal the transfer window. It's bad, man. I'm going to give them, I'm going to say 6. I'm really want to say 6. I'm going to be fair. It's about average because we spent way more money than we normally do. So that's the reason I'm going to say above average. We signed a player at a record we didn't think we'd do, even fighting other teams off for him in Declan Rice. And we didn't sell crazy about first-team players. The reason why it's above average is that's the reason. If you see a lot of our other windows, I'm really comparing us to ourselves. A lot of windows, we've sold too many players. We haven't replaced them. But the reason why it doesn't get higher than a 6, and I'm being fair here, is because we didn't sign enough players. 4 is never enough. I don't care in any window. 4 players in the summer window is embarrassing. Whether you signed a couple young players that with potential, but 3 players, not even 4, 3 players in a loan will never be enough. We sold a couple more first team, and a couple players we signed. Well, a player we signed, we didn't rate him. 1 player we've got on loan, and I felt like this window was quite a healthy window. There's a lot of players we could have signed. There's a lot of players, other teams signed players. But I'm like, okay, why were we not really going for him? Diaby, Kudus, Fatty, Talisman. There's a lot of players that we actually could have gone through. I'm like, okay, you know what? Why are we not interested in that guy? Why are we not? Why don't we look at him? Why don't we give him a second look over Eric Garcia going on loan to Jerome or whatever you want to? I do think there was a lot of players available. If we didn't have the money, there were players on loan that were available. We just went out of our way not to sign them. Even the players we were interested in the beginning, 1.5 of those players. Castagna and all of that. I don't know what happened to that. We just kind of lost interest. Carlos Walker's Peters. I just watched Southampton get smacked 4-0, so I don't really want him. But you know, a lot of those signings, we became desperate towards the end. So yeah. But guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Myself, Tim Jones, or King Jones, football pull up.